My wife's old affair partner confessed, and I found out both of my children aren't mine. I exposed her to absolutely everyone we knew. It's taking a lot of strength to write this right now. I wasn't even sure that I would, but after talking with someone, I realized that it might do me a lot of good to put my thoughts into writing. I've never felt a betrayal like this in my life, and I just don't know what I'm meant to do anymore. I do hope that I can write this in a way that is coherent and easy to understand, since I'm not a writer. I'm just going to try and pull all my thoughts into words, and hopefully do a good enough job at that. I, 40 male, have been married to Natasha, 40 female, for 12 years. We have 2 children. One is 11 and the other is 8, and that was where we were meant to stop with having kids. They're both amazing children, and I felt like I was extremely lucky to have them as my children, since being a parent is very challenging. There's never been a reason for me to doubt that my children were mine. They both look like Natasha, and before conceiving, we used to sleep together regularly, so everything just made sense to me. There was nothing odd in her behavior to make me suspect that she had something going on outside our marriage. This was someone who I trusted, and clearly that was a big mistake. But how was I supposed to know better? Some people are so good at lying that you simply will never find out the truth, and that was what happened here. When both our children were still very young, we moved to another city for better opportunities. It was a decision that paid off well, but looking back, it hit Natasha really hard. She said that she was going to miss her friends, but she didn't have many. We were moving to a city that had most of her family, so it didn't seem like a thing to be heartbroken about, but I didn't think too much about it, because it makes sense that leaving one person can be enough to cry, even if there are more people you love where you're going. We left a lot of relationships behind when we left that old city, but I didn't mind too much. I kept in touch when it was worth it, but in adult life, some friendships just fade out, and that's what happened with a bunch. Back when we were there, she worked with a guy called Cody. I knew him rather well. I wouldn't say that we were friends, but we were cool with each other. If you left the 2 of us in a room together, things wouldn't be awkward. She was on better terms with him than I was, since they worked together, but I never felt like there was something wrong with their relationship. It was never something that I had to worry about. It's clear that I should have been worrying about it because I found out that Natasha and Cody had a very inappropriate relationship, and it was kept a complete secret from me. I would have had no idea about it if Cody hadn't decided to come and admit it to me, 11 years after the fact. He was one of the people I never bothered to keep in touch with, so I was shocked when I saw a message from him. I thought it'd be typical catching up, but he let me know that he had a big confession to make. Over text, I had to hear this guy tell me that he used to sleep with my wife. He couldn't remember when it started, but it only ended because we had to move. He said that it must have gone on for about 4 or 5 years while they were working together. There was absolutely no proof of his claim. It was a guy from the past who was coming to tell me that he used to F my wife, and I was meant to just believe it? I mean, the fact that he was just someone from that far back was what made me worried, because unless he was really bored, I couldn't figure out why he'd wake up and decide to just concoct a lie like that. I really didn't want to believe him, but my brain kept asking me, what if it's true? And I couldn't get it out of my head. Unlike a lot of stories of men finding out that their wives were cheating on them, there was no way for me to snoop through her phone and find something to back up his claim. If she was still talking to him for some reason, I might see flirty messages, but I would have expected him to mention that they were still being inappropriate with each other if he had to come to confess. He confessed to something that happened in the past, not something in the present, so I assumed there was nothing in the present. I did check her phone eventually, and there was nothing to show that she was still in contact with him, or to show that she was cheating on me with anyone. I wanted to tell her. It was the kind of thing I would tell her on an ordinary day, because it's noteworthy that someone we both knew from so far in our past would reach out. I didn't fully disbelieve him though, and that was the problem. Part of me knew that it could be true, and I didn't know if there was anything to gain from confronting her immediately. I decided to hold off on any confrontation. It was destroying me from the inside though. I reached out to ask him more, because I was really unsure about his claim. I wanted to find a hole, something to prove to me that he was just BSing, and when I got that, I would finally tell Natasha about it. Call me a fool, but I didn't want the life that I was building to turn out to be a scam for the very start. He told me details of when they would go off to cheat, and they made sense, but it's not like it was anything that I could verify. It started over a decade ago. Everything fell apart when he told me that he had been trying to hint at the situation without being too blunt, but he admitted to me that there was a very good chance that both of my kids were his. At that point, I felt like he just had some kind of grudge against me, because I couldn't figure out why someone who could come back into my life just to hurt me. I barely had anything to do with him. I asked him what his objective was, and he said he was just there to let me know the truth. He said he couldn't keep sitting around while I lived a lie. I stopped replying to him at that point because there was nothing else I could say to him. I felt like I couldn't think straight, but I knew that the first thing I was going to have to do was to make sure that my children were actually mine. It felt like I could keep living if they were my children, but she had cheated on me. But if they weren't, it genuinely felt like I wouldn't be able to keep going. At the first chance I got, I took both of my children to a lab where DNA samples were taken. I was told that the results would come next week. My kids had no idea what we had gone for, so there wasn't much chance of things leaking. To be sure, I bribed them by taking them out for fast food and telling them not to tell their mom what we had done that day. Waiting for the results was so hard for me. I had no choice but to be strong and be patient, and I did that. The results eventually came the following week, as they had told me. That has easily been the worst day of my entire life. I opened the results and I saw that neither of my children were mine. I genuinely felt like I was going to lose my mind. I wanted to bang my head into a wall. I wanted to drink until I threw up. I just didn't care about myself in that moment. Do you understand what it feels like to think that you have a happy life with a wife and 2 sweet children, and then you find out that none of it was even real? Your wife wasn't loyal to you, and both of your children belonged to someone else. Do you understand the resentment you feel towards everyone involved, and even yourself? I didn't want to live anymore. There's no way to sugarcoat it. I left the house right away. Natasha called and kept asking where I went over text, but I didn't have an answer to give her. I eventually returned home, but I was extremely apathetic. I told her later that I just needed time to myself for a weekend, and I would explain everything when I got back. She didn't want me to go, but I did. I'm writing all of this during the same weekend. I don't know how I'm going to handle things when I return home, because at this moment, my life is ruined. How do you start to confront a woman like that? What can you say that will actually drive home how you feel? How do you do it without violence? I'm not myself right now. I'm with a friend, so I'll be okay, but I don't know what the future holds for me. I'm so broken. 11 years later, and Cody just decides to confess like it's some kind of moral detox? Bro didn't find Jesus, he found boredom. Imagine sitting around thinking, you know what would spice up my Tuesday? Destroying a man's dignity. And then to see that neither child is his. Not even a 50-50 chance. Just straight up genetic eviction. You can't come back from that. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not financially. Oof. Update 1. First of all, let me thank everyone who reached out to me and everyone who left supportive comments to make sure I was okay. I felt alone, but a lot of you poured out so much love that I realized that I really wasn't alone in this. It is still the hardest part of my life, but you all have made it a little easier and genuinely stopped me from doing something stupid to myself. I confronted Natasha about the situation when I got back home after a weekend away, because I couldn't continue to keep it locked up. I knew that I'd go crazy if I had to keep forcing myself to lock up. I told her that I had been contacted by Cody from back when we were in our previous city, and she seemed very surprised. She asked me what he reached out to me for, and I told her that he claimed that the two of them had had an affair back then. She nearly jumped out of her seat, and then she started to deny it. She was way more defensive than she should have been, but she told me that he had always been a joker and it was probably some kind of stupid prank he was trying to pull. I asked her why she thought that someone we hadn't seen in like 7 or 8 years would have chosen to pull a prank like that one on me, of all people, and she admitted that she didn't know. I told her that he also claimed that our children were his. She nearly lost her mind at that, and she said she was going to reach out to him right away to give him a piece of her mind. I told her to calm down, because she didn't have to keep putting up an act. I let her know that the moment that he claimed that, I made plans to take the kids to a lab, and I had had both of them tested. When she heard that, her demeanor changed immediately. She was frightened, and she started to shake. I let her know that both of them were not my children, and I said that out loud. I couldn't help but cry. It was like it made it real. My 2 sons weren't mine. These were children I had loved deeper than anyone else on earth, and the love had been misplaced the entire time. She started to cry too, and she told me that she never knew. She said that Cody hadn't been lying, but it was a stupid mistake she had made back then. She regretted it, and she had never messed around after we moved. She said she didn't know which of us was the father, and it amazed me that she thought that was meant to make the situation any better, because it meant that the 2 of us had been sleeping with her at the same time. It only made me angry to hear that. She said that she was so sorry for what she had done, and that she had regretted it every day, but she knew that if she admitted to her affair, I would have left. She repeated that she didn't know that the kids weren't mine. I told her that she didn't regret the affair because it went on for about 5 years. It also went on after our first child. It only stopped because we relocated too far for it to actually continue. I told her that I had already tortured myself enough, and there was nothing she was going to say that was going to make it worse. so there was no point in her lying. I had stopped crying by then, but she was crying quite a lot, and it was really annoying me. I just walked out of the house at that point. There was nothing else for me to say to her, and there was nothing she was going to say that was going to change the reality of my life. I didn't even understand how I was meant to break the news to the kids. They were entitled to know their biological dad, but before that point, I needed to make it clear to them that I wasn't their real dad. And how was I meant to do that? I still don't know the answer to that, but I'll figure it out at some point. Natasha has been served with divorce papers, and to be honest, I think I'll try my best to reach a quick resolution rather than a long, drawn-out process. I don't care about winning the divorce. I just don't want to be effed over. That's all. Update 2. This will be a quick little update, but I have spoken to the kids. I can't even call them my children anymore, which kills me. I want them to be, but when there's a real dad out there, what role am I supposed to play? It was very hard, and it was another moment that made me realize how little I want to keep living. When I told them, the younger brother didn't seem to fully understand at first, but I didn't need to repeat myself before the older son understood. I told them that things had happened years ago, but we found out that I wasn't their dad. I made sure they knew that their mom was their mom. They cried. A lot. And I told them that I'll always love them, but I wouldn't be around much anymore, or even at all. It broke my heart, but I had to say that. But I had to tell them the truth, because I had no idea how things would play out for me in the future. After that talk, I left the house. I couldn't continue to live there, especially after everything in my life turned out to be a lie. There's really nothing left to make me as happy as I deserve to be. For now, I'm going to focus on the divorce process so that there can be a clean split, and after that, I'll figure out what I want to do with my life. Update 3. I'm now officially someone's ex-husband, and in this case, I am incredibly happy that I can say that. There was no reason for me to have anything else to do with that woman. When it came to the divorce process, the first thing I focused on was making sure that custody was entirely out of the way. I had the court order another paternity test, and part of me hoped that the results were going to be different, but they weren't. That meant that I didn't need to worry about custody or child support. I let the house go because I simply wasn't interested in it. That house had way too many memories for me to choose to stay in it, and it was too big for me to be alone anyway. It felt like I was giving it up for those kids, not for Natasha. I earn more than her, but somehow I managed to squeeze out of paying alimony, and that makes me glad, because it means that there is nothing to tie me to Natasha in the future. That's good enough for me. The divorce was uncomplicated, and I was thankful for that much. I messaged Cody, and I gave him my full thoughts on the situation. I told him quite honestly that I hated him, and I wished him the worst, but I told him to take care of his children because I loved them, and they deserved love too. That was all I could do to him. For Natasha, however, I chose to hurt her in the way I knew it would hurt her the most. She's the kind of woman who tries to live her life very privately. People do not know things about her, though she loves to gossip about other people. I chose to remove that mystery from her life. I wrote a very long post about her on Facebook, which is the social media platform she uses the most. I tagged her in it. I put pictures of the paternity test, and I also put pictures of her. The post explained the entire situation, and I made sure to put her in the least flattering light possible. I made sure everyone learned that she was a scumbag. I might not have done this if I hadn't had to tell those children that I wasn't their real dad. That's what hurts me the most in this entire thing. It broke me away that I can't describe to do that. I realized how much I hated her when I did that, so I just had to show it to the world. I called her parents, her friends, some relatives of hers that I knew, and I told them all as well. She kept trying to call me, but I kept hanging up on her. I even posted it on a Facebook page for people who worked at her company. I didn't want to spare her from the embarrassment. She called me, and she was clearly angry, but I think somewhere inside, she knew that I was merely reacting to what she had done, and she had no right to direct that anger at me. I'm glad that she didn't, because even when I confronted her, I kept my emotions in check. Over the phone, I only told her that she deserved everything that I was doing. She didn't say anything, but I know she knows it's the truth. She started to cry over the phone, and that's when I hung up on her. I've seen her and the kids a few times since I did that, and she engaged me as little as possible, which is what I prefer. They were really happy to see me, and it hurts because I can't keep doing this to them. At some point, I'm going to have to stop, and it will break me inside, but I'll deal with that when the time comes. The truth is, they were a reminder of the biggest betrayal I've ever had to endure, and a reminder of the worst time in my life. I can't keep raising another man's children for him, especially when he's alive and well. Maybe I'll figure it out someday, but for now, I know one day I will leave them to their real father. If they hate me for it, that's fine. I hope one day they realize that it was all their mother's fault. I always did my best for them. That confrontation, phew. She really tried to gaslight her way out of a DNA test. Like, ma'am, science isn't a prank. You can't charm your way past genetic evidence. You didn't humiliate her out of spite. You told the truth out loud of her being forced to live a lie for over a decade. Sometimes silence is grace, and sometimes silence is just protecting the guilty. You chose the truth, and that's fair. The part that's really gutting was you telling the kids. That couldn't have been easy, and I can't imagine what that moment did to you. But you did what you needed to do to survive. You cut ties, burned bridges, and finally put the story in your own words. That's power. It doesn't erase the pain, but it takes back the control. If you found out the kids you'd raised for years weren't yours, how would you even begin to process it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today on Our Space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you again soon.